Welcome back to Massacre on Muriel Court. This is the second half of my interview with Glenn Wall, author of Zodiac Maniac. But first, let's review what we learned last week in part 1. If you haven't listened to part 1 of this interview or any earlier episode in the show, please hit pause and go back and do so. Otherwise, you will find yourself pretty lost. So first of all, the phone call overheard in Brevard County. Again, the caller said he had done a horrible thing. I have killed 3 people. Almost perfect dictation, just the way William Thoresen spoke. Brevard County investigators announced that they had someone in custody, a former mental patient. William Thoresen was a former mental patient. Obviously, they must have let that person go and nothing ever came of it. But why? Thoresen has been connected to murders involving guns and knives, possibly a bayonet. In the Bricka case, the head wounds possibly matched a pommel from a bayonet. The pommel is an enlarged fitting at the top of the handle of a sword or bayonet. Valerie Percy had those same types of wounds on her head. Burglary was ruled out as a motive in the Bricka, Percy, and Sims cases. In both the Bricka and Sims cases, a young man of similar description was spotted making strange gestures near the crime scene. Bricka before the murders and Sims just after. 2 different jurisdictions, a judge in Illinois and the Leon County Sheriff's Office, made almost identical excuses in and around 2016 when outsiders attempted to get a look at the case files for Percy in Illinois and the Sims in Tallahassee. So who might be running the show here? These cases are so old and so cold. Why do officials seem to not want them solved? Let's listen to the rest of my interview with Glenn Wall and see what we can put together.
It's mostly quiet on Muriel Court, but that wasn't the case in 1966 when Robert Sims, his wife Helen, and young daughter Joy found gagged, stabbed, and shot to death.
Safer politically to leave it alone.
Get in there now. Take care of the problem.
Moronic is the word that comes to mind.
He's accusing 2 top officials of a cover-up.
Standing back there under the banana tree.
Surveillance video of a 1966 FSU football game may be the key to cracking the code in this case gone cold.
You do that.
And while state officials aren't releasing details regarding suspects or persons of interest, they did stress their commitment to finding the Sims killers.
Oh, I think you did it. All of a sudden you became absolutely down, totally obsessed with that.
It's a case that we would certainly like to see solved, and investigators are actively working on the case.
Now, I want to ask you, what makes you so sure that William Thoresen was the Zodiac? And I know this is a big question.
But getting back to what you just said about the distance between Tallahassee and where that suspect was questioned or located, keep in mind that Zodiac, from what I've seen, it's presumed now that he was murdering in Southern California as early as 1962. So you have an enormous distance between Northern and Southern California as well. Yeah. So that's something to consider, I think, relevant to what you just said. I believe Thoresen was Zodiac because, I mean, the list is long, hence I got a book out of it. There were 3 witnesses at Lake Berryessa who observed a suspect for about 20 minutes just before the attacks there. They were three college-age women, I believe they said. And all 3 of them gave statements about this person that they watched. And they could not, I've read over those reports, they could not have described Thoresen more in words I don't think. They were incredible witnesses. His ears, his lips, his hairstyle, his hair color, the hair part, his height, build. One or two of them said he was kind of good looking. I know that other people agree. So, and that may have been, as far as Ted Bundy goes, people said many people considered him to be a good looking guy. That worked in his favor as a serial killer. So there's that. In the last confirmed Zodiac attack of Paul Stein, witnesses at the scene saw the suspect walk north, and then 2 police officers saw a suspect who fit Thorson's description walking east and then north again. Thorson's house in San Francisco, his mansion, was 12 blocks northeast of the crime scene, of the Stein crime scene. One of the witnesses at the scene said that the suspect, or said that Zodiac, it wasn't a suspect, it was Zodiac, said that he had red in his hair. And in William's book, wife's book, she says that he had reddish brown hair. Most people that I've seen who've studied that case believe that Zodiac did not wear glasses, even though he was seen wearing glasses at the scene. Thorson did not wear glasses. In one of Zodiac's I believe it's the bus bomb letter, he says at the time that the police were looking for the Stein's killer, that they had canine units searching the park. And in the bus bomb letter, Zodiac says, the dogs never got within 2 blocks of me, and they were to the east. They were to the west. Thorson's house was 2 blocks due east of the part of the park where they were searching. We know that the Lake Berryessa victims were tied up. They tied each other up. That whole scenario that he was saying, I need money. I've escaped from somewhere. He led them to believe that they were just going to be robbed. And then you have the way the Brickas, appeared to have been a similar scenario, and the Sims adults as well. There are handwriting samples I have in my book, and this is, this may seem outrageous or something, but anybody can take the evidence and the arguments that I've made in Zodiac Maniac and take those to social media, take those to crime sites, and I will say I would bet good money that you will see that those posts will be buried, they will be censored, they will be. In the case of Facebook, I've seen my evidence that I've put up just immediately erased right off the screen. So I've never seen that happen with any other Zodiac suspect.
I wonder why, though. Why would they want to protect this guy? And who's trying to protect him? I think they want to protect him. There's a lot more in my book coming out, but I can tell you that I believe that 5 innocent people went to prison for murders that Thorson committed. And in a couple of those cases, the cases against the people looked extremely weak. And one, it looks like one of the witnesses changed her story or was lying in court. Defense witnesses were harassed by police. My belief is that authorities wanted these cases, quote, solved, unquote, so that people wouldn't be saying, no, this was Zodiac. And I know in some of these cases, even though they were, quote, solved, unquote, that people have argued that it was really Zodiac. And it's because the guy was extremely unique. He did things that were very strange. And once again, we're talking about the 1960s. We're talking about, years before the explosion in random killings and serial killer cases that came along starting in the mid 70s. Wow. Okay. So when can we expect your new book coming out?
Well, I just sent it along to the editor. I'll know more, when he has a look at it, probably in the next month or so. So looking at other cases that he would be involved in and relevancy to the Sims murders, there was a kidnapping murder in La Crosse, Wisconsin in 1953. And it was a babysitter. Her name was Evelyn Hartley. This happened on October 24th, 1953. She was abducted, disappeared, vanished. Presumed murder. She was kidnapped in La Crosse when, very much like the Sims case, there was a big local football game going on. And when people talk about the Sims case and they say, well, did this guy plan to do this during the big football game where half the town would be away and preoccupied? Take a look at the Evelyn Hartley case.
But the Evelyn Hart, that happened
1953.
So 13 years earlier?
Exactly.
How
I think
old?
it may have been it may have been William's first murder. He was just old enough to drive. He was 16. Now remember, we're talking about Zodiac here. We're talking about a guy that people who study that case more than I have, they have believed that this guy was some sort of anomaly. He was operating on a whole other level. You know, just from the 4 attacks that they're aware of, the 4 attacks they're aware of and several others that they presume that he did for good reason. So at age 16, a week or 2 after getting his driver's license. Now remember, William's in Chicago at the time. He's in the North Chicago suburbs. There was an evidence trail leading to Chicago, or in the direction of Chicago, from the Hartley case. They also believe that the killer came back to the area and threw more evidence out of the car for police, which they would have discovered had it been there in the hours or days immediately preceding the murder. I can tell you that I suspect William and other people have suspected Zodiac in cases where he returned to the crime scene. He left more evidence, and that's documented, and police were sure of it.
Okay. Well, the reason that I asked that question about if you thought he took trophies or
Right.
anything from the scene, one of the strangest facts about the Sims murder is that their marriage certificate, which was framed and hung on the wall, was taken from the house. Okay,
well, that's a fantastic bit of information I was not aware of. I can tell you that William was a hoarder, and when they were on their honeymoon, William and his wife were in Maine, I believe it was, and they were I don't know if they were in a government office or they were in an office of a company or an organization that ran a ferry boat somewhere that they took. And William was arrested for stealing posters off of a wall in that office.
I did read that.
And so that immediately comes to mind. I mean, his mother, they had hoarding in that family. So you have these cases where Zodiac is taking things, and in Zodiac like murders, somebody's taking things and mailing them back.
Well, and see, and in Tallahassee, I just know that there's probably so much that they never released to the public. Right. A lot of this is so interesting and suspicious. That's one of the reasons I'm trying to, particularly with the Sims, like I just said, I know that there's things that they have never released to the public, and I'm keeping my mind completely open and covering. I mean, wherever this rabbit hole takes me, I'm going to talk about it, because at this point, it's been 56, 57 years now.
That's it. I don't think it's a coincidence that in the Percy case and the Bricka case and the Sims case that DNA hasn't been tested. Original police reports that are now well over 50 years haven't been released. And you look at all these other cases, including Zodiac, and they have been.
Right.
And years ago. So I don't think that's a coincidence. But it's all very strange given what we know about the cases. And, the ultimate irony is that if I believe that her book, that Thorson's wife's book, was part of a cover-up, and that the jewel thieves story in the early 70s was part of a cover-up, and the judge's decision 6 years ago about the Percy case files, or Jeremy leaving his, position because he was looking into the Sims case as part of a cover-up. It's just, people will say, oh, why would they cover this up? And I would say, well, because they sent innocent people to jail as part of the cover-up years ago. And I believe in one of these cases, the only thing that they had is they said they had DNA on this person, and they put them in prison, and they died in prison. And they had no history of violence. They had no felony convictions, other than I think maybe there was a prescription drug charge or something. I don't know if it was a felony. But, I don't think they would want that to get out. But it's scary to think in this day and age, people think about DNA and DNA being a useful tool and stuff. And it's like, what if the government wanted to put you in jail to cover up someone else's involvement in a crime? And all they had was DNA, and they said we had DNA, and the jury goes, they have DNA.
Yeah.
That's in one of these cases, that is what, and it's a case I believe I can make a strong argument that William committed. That's what we're dealing with. That's the world we're dealing with now, that and censorship.
Okay, so in the interest of time, where can my listeners find your book?
They're available at Barnes and Noble as ebooks. They're available at Amazon as ebooks and in print.
Okay. Well, I'm going to put the link to your book in the show notes for this episode. And if anyone wanted to contact you to discuss the case, are you open to that? Are you on social media? Do you have a website? Tell me about that.
How did you contact me?
I found you on, I believe it's your blog about a cover-up.
Okay, right. So, yes, anybody. I mean, I'm like on LinkedIn. That might be a good place to contact me. You can certainly put an email address contact in there if you want.
Okay.
So I congratulate you for all your good work that you've dug up on this.
Well, thank you.
Some of the things you've told me have astonished me.
Wow. Well, thank you.
And trying to get information out as I have, and it's a lot of work. It
is a lot of work, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. And I feel like we've made some good connections here together. Mm-hmm. Things that I didn't know, things that you didn't know, which is also, I mean, I'm still not sold either way on anything. I'm still keeping my mind open. Right. There's some other very, very compelling suspects in the Sims case, but I'm going to cover everything I find.
I watched that documentary. Was it a college student or somebody did on the Sims case?
Yes. The 641 Muriel Court. That was great.
Yeah. It had a lot of really good information, and it was really well done by someone who was doing their first. I mean, I think that was their first documentary?
I believe so. Yeah. We actually talked to him several years ago on, I actually have another show that I do called Paradise After Dark. And we covered the Sims case in 2019. Back then we actually spoke to him, the guy who made that documentary.
Right. I did find it interesting that, and I don't know what sources he had other than the people that appeared in it, but I did find it interesting that neither the phone call nor the brief information from, I don't know if it was at the police or the medical examiner's office or what it was about the knife, the description of the wounds. I found it interesting that he didn't have that because, when you're working with something where there's so little about the potential weapon, the wounds, the physical evidence of the case, that wasn't in there.
Right.
But, I came across it in one of the stories and it jumped out knowing what I know about the bayonet and Thorson. So, keep on researching. I think there's going to be a lot of information. I would take a look at that Evelyn Hartley case, and I would think that anybody who looks at the Sims case and the whole thing about the football game taking place will find an eerie similarity there. And when you talk about the progression of killers, and I'm talking about William having committed murders from the early, since he was 16, you can't suspect anybody of a worse murder than the Anderson case. That's still a famous case. Detectives to this day still know, young detectives learn about that in Chicago. They still have the evidence, the barrels in the evidence locker there. I talked to a detective about that when I was working on my first book. You will see an evolution in his crimes as to how careful he was. I mean, in the Hartley case, her body was never found. That's a reason to believe that was one of his first murders. I believe growing up in Chicago in the time that he grew up, being the psychopath that he was and deciding to murder, I believe that he read about the Leopold and Loeb case, and he practiced, he studied that case, and he made efforts to avoid getting caught based on, leaving evidence at the crime scene. And as he evolved, he became more confident, and he started leaving bodies around. And, but you can see the evolution. And, if you believe that the Hartley case was his first murder or one of his first murders, then you see that her body was never found. And that is because he was being extremely careful. But there's a lot more in the new manuscripts about early cases and this evolution.
Well, I will look forward to that coming out at some point. And my listeners can find Zodiac Maniac by Glenn Wall at Amazon or Barnes & Noble if they'd like to read it. It's pretty interesting. I will say that.
It's been great talking, and let's stay in touch because, definitely let me know about Jeremy's segment because you guys know a lot more about this case than I do.
So let's review this a little bit. Glenn brought up a case about a babysitter named Evelyn Hartley who was kidnapped and murdered in La Crosse, Wisconsin in 1953 while a huge football game was happening, and pretty much the whole town was attending, just like the night the Sims were killed. William Thoresen is a suspect in the Evelyn Hartley kidnapping and presumed murder. Glenn actually believes this may have been Thoresen's first murder. Thoresen would have been 16 at the time. DNA has never been tested in the Percy, Bricka, or Sims case. Why? Is William Thoresen the Zodiac killer? Did William Thoresen kill the Sims family? And if so, does that mean that the Sims family were killed by the infamous never-caught serial killer called Zodiac? Wow. Is there any kind of cover-up going on here with all of these unsolved cases? And if so, why? Did they put innocent people away for crimes they didn't commit just to, quote, close the case? Are they still trying to cover up mistakes made over 5 decades ago? Join me next week as we explore this. Massacre on Muriel Court is researched, written, and produced by me, Lauren Samples. If you'd like to support the show, please consider joining our Palmahawk Media Patreon page. Patreon.com/Palmahawk Media. That's PALMAHAWK Media. On Patreon, you'll receive early and ad-free episodes of this show and our sister show, Paradise After Dark, along with exclusive content for both shows. Thanks for listening.